It is now 11:15, so let's resume the meeting. So members, please return to your seat. The next to speak will be Mr. Junius Ho. First round, 4 minutes. Thank you, Chair. In principle, I support the Kai Tak Sports Park, but then there are a few fundamental points that I would like to get a reply from the administration. First of all, sports facilities are, after all, recreational facilities. It's for the people. We mustn't forget this fundamental point. For the Kai Tak Sports Park, does it mean that by having it, we can meet the territory-wide requirements, and so we can demolish the existing facilities? So I hope that you can confirm that we are not sacrificing our existing facilities. And then for the new facility, there will be a main stadium with a capacity of 50,000. It will be used for football matches, and you will have artificial turf. What about the Hong Kong Stadium? The Permanent Secretary has said that the utilization rate is low. First, because of the noise problem. Second, we need to maintain the natural turf. For Kai Tak, when it is built, we can then replace the turf of the Hong Kong Stadium. And what about the track? Since Wan Chai may have to go as a result to make way for the expansion of the Hong Kong CEC, then Wan Chai will be demolished. Now, in the past, in order to promote the Rugby 7, the tracks have been removed from the Hong Kong Stadium. Now, I believe that you should revamp the turf for the Hong Kong Stadium, but I don't think we should reinstall the tracks. Are we going to host the Rugby 7? Even with Kai Tak Sports Park, it doesn't mean that all the Rugby 7 matches should be hosted at the Kai Tak Sports Park. I don't think we should be limiting our choices. For Wan Chai, whether it should be redeveloped or not, I think it's a matter of design. If you are willing to pay for it, then ideas will come in. Will Wan Chai sports ground, and should it be sacrificed just to have an expansion of the CEC under the TTC? I think it can be built at grade, above ground. I don't think we should give way to the TTC by sacrificing Wan Chai. So by having the Kai Tak Sports Park, I hope it doesn't mean that we are going to give up Wan Chai sports ground. And I don't think we should turn Hong Kong Stadium into neither fish or fowl. I think we should have the best model. Then that should be the ultimate goal. And then for the design, build and operate approach, I really hope that whether there will be other alternatives. You have said that it is the best model out of the dozen or so that you have studied.
I agree with Mr. Michael Tian. We're laying out the cash for other people to operate their business. Well, if you consider the land premium, we should get a return of 1% or so. But now it seems like it's a bottomless pit like Sha Tin Central Link and other projects. Well, Mr. Ho, even though I have been lax in exercising time control in the first round, but I would also like you to save some time for officials to respond. You used up all your time. So in the second round, actually there is an answer. Somebody had asked that question before, and the Secretary had also promised to provide a written response regarding the other options. So the consultant had provided different options regarding the DBO. So your first question wasn't directly about the sports park, but to allow the commissioner to respond. Well, the whole building of the sports park is not to replace existing facilities. We talked about the Hong Kong Stadium, QE Stadium. They will continue to exist. Hong Kong doesn't have enough of these indoor stadiums. But the Hong Kong Stadium, it's very close to the 50,000 seat. It doesn't have a track, and it is for rugby and soccer. So that's why we want to take a look at Hong Kong Stadium. Could we modify its use? So we did conduct a feasibility study. Whether we will include a track, it will depend on the results of the technical study. Regarding Wan Chai Stadium, that has always been an independent issue. It's not because we're building the Kai Tak Sports Park we will have to renovate the Wan Chai sports facility. We have to wait for TDC study to be completed. Mr. Lau Kok Fan, second round. Well, in the first round, I had asked some questions. The secretary responded, and there had been some follow-ups by colleagues, but I still need to clarify that. I feel the construction should have a ceiling. Such a large project, we need to have a cap, and the government should pay a fixed sum. And as I said, and the final figure is 30 plus billion. The operator will definitely make a profit, and afterwards you require them to operate it for 20 years. Will they be sincere? Of course, it's unknown now, but the question, as I said, and the secretary did not answer, if there's an early termination, it might not, because of a poor operation or not living up to expectations. Will the government have to pay any compensation? But they've already made their profit. Is there any penalty aside from the dividend to the government? Do we have any other penalties? If you look at the cruise terminal, the contractor wasn't responsible for operation and the design, but after construction, the cruise terminal, it's not doing any business at all. So if the sports park is mismanaged, how can? Well, the government says there could be an early termination. The government could resume it. Well, the operator might be very relieved if that were the case. Well, and how can we allow local athletes and sports events to be hosted? The secretary said that the design can allow for an increased usage, but but it has to be affordable and attractive. That needs to be resolved. Otherwise, you just say that the design can accommodate greater use, but in reality, is it suitable? Is it affordable? We need more details. Secretary. Well, the whole design needs to have a carrot and a stick. So in the penalties, if they cannot meet performance indicators or requirements, there are penalties. In responding to Mr. Wu Jiwei, we said that they need to make a deposit. They have to provide a promissory note. If they want to exit, they will have to forfeit their deposit. And we also have consulted our legal advisors, so we need to protect the government and the public's interests. So once we have more details, we can disclose them. Well, I think you need to do so as soon as possible. If you talked about the deposit, we need to know how much it is. If you're talking about a 30 billion project, If the deposit is too small, they might want to terminate early. Miss Claudia Mo. Well, I heard the officials say that the Kai Tak Sports Park and is not. It's an independent project. It's not related to the Hong Kong Stadium, the QE Stadium. Now, even if you say the Wan Chai is independent, it's not related, and you have to wait for the studies. So I don't know what your timetable is going to be. And I understand it's not part of today's discussion, but you said that the Hong Kong Stadium, it is actually related. They are competing against each other. And the Hong Kong Stadium doesn't have a track. And there are also natural turf and noise concerns. Well, I'm worried. The Rugby Sevens is an annual event. It's an international event. What about what happens after that? Now, I have a question. If the Kai Tak Sports Park is built, will that mean that the Hong Kong Stadium can be scrapped? Well, and I know that you are adopting a DBO model. I'm not objecting, but at the operational level, you want to set a cap. You talked about a deposit, and you haven't calculated the deposit level, and you will disclose later. But you still have to seek funding from the Finance Committee. At the FC, can you guarantee, will you be able to disclose what the deposit amount will be? Well, if I understand correctly, Ms. Claudia Mo wants to know the Rugby Sevens, where will that be held? Well, the Rugby NSA has told us that if the Kai Tak Sports Park is built, they will take the annual Rugby Sevens event, they will host it at Kai Tak. So why do they have that request? Aside from the seating capacity being suitable from 40,000 to 50,000, the Hong Kong Stadium lacks some facilities. The participating teams have made complaints. The locker, the changing facilities, the protocol facilities, the media facilities are insufficient. So if Kai Tak has better facilities, they will move to Kai Tak. Does that mean Hong Kong Stadium cannot host soccer and rugby events? Well, I mentioned just now, in our feasibility study, we will look into that. But I need to emphasize that whether it's soccer or rugby, they don't want to have a track. If we have an 8-lane track, it detracts from enjoyment of their sport. Now, regarding the promissory note, the deposit, we had pledged that they will need to give us time to arrange for the tender. It will take 6 to 9 months, and it has to be sufficient enough to to last through the transition period. That is, we'll have to consider the operating cost per month. Ms. Mo is asking on the next FC meeting before this, when this application is made at the FC, can you provide these figures? Yes, we can. We already have income expenditure figures, and the shortfall is the cost of operating costs. So we will do the arithmetic and provide you with the figures. Mr. Law Gun Chung. Well, I need to add a footnote that the commissioner and officials say that Wan Chai Sports Stadium is an independent project, but the government has been saying that after renovation of Hong Kong Stadium, it would replace the Wan Chai Stadium, and Wan Chai Stadium would likely be demolished. So whether you will, the whole projection is based on the Hong Kong Stadium will not be competing with Kai Tak Sports Park, so it gives people the message that Wan Chai will be demolished. Now, the officials have given us a pledge, and I feel the public, they need to be informed. So after modification of the Hong Kong Stadium, it will not compete with Kai Tak Sports Park, and Wan Chai Sports Stadium can be maintained. That can relieve the public of their doubts. We do lack facilities, and if we have that pledge, then we can assure the public that Kai Tak Sports Park is not a backdoor for converting Wan Chai into a TDC project. Now, looking at DBO models, well, one example is the Western Harbour Crossing, because after completion, the government was not able to monitor it. It was expensive, and we now have a lot of traffic problems. So when there's a mismanagement, we have a lot of problems. In West Kowloon in 2003, they had considered using a DBFO to find consortiums and other contractors, but there were a lot of objections. They were afraid it was going to be a real estate project. And regarding the financing, the DBO, the government's oversight of that falls far short of the PWPO. So there was a valid question: will the contractor make a big profit first and then drag its feet in operations? Well, I had repeatedly said that the Wan Chai Stadium development, it's undergoing a feasibility study by the TDC, and the Kai Tak Sports Park, we had a discussion 10 plus years ago, and if we can get funding now, we can start the construction. So when we were discussing Kai Tak Sports Park, we could not foresee the Wan Chai Stadium development. So that's why I say the two issues are independent. And regarding the DBO and the BOT, I think Mr. Yu is very clear. Western Harbour Crossing is a BOT, and it requires the investor to come up with its own financing. And 30 years down the road, it will be returned to the government. Here, the project is, the bill is footed by the government, so we have a greater say than the private financing. So we can establish a committee to monitor the operations of the Kai Tak Sports Park. Okay. Next, Mr. Eddie Chu. I'd like to ask about DBO. Our colleagues' discussion focused on operations, the dividend. Michael Tian asked, should the government receive a minimum payment? Since we have design and build, the document indicates the government will foot the bill. The successful tenderer in the design and build, what monies will they receive? Do we have a figure for design and build? Because in paragraph 14, I don't see the successful tenderer, how much money they'll receive for designing and building. Commissioner? Well, first of all, the design in the tender stage will invite the tenderers to submit building and design costs. They also have to provide the ticketing revenue sharing ratio to the government, and the minimum payment regarding designing and building. In preliminary works, we do a lot of research. We have construction cost estimate, but at the tender stage, when different tenderers submit their quotation, it is their assessment of the construction costs. So when we assess the tender, this is an important component. We want to attract more tenders, and we want the tender process to be more competitive. They also have to compete on price. If they have a lower price in the assessment, they will get higher, bigger weight. That's just one criteria. We have also other points. We have technical rating, the tender quality. So we're not just looking at price. Chairman, I want to ask, they talk about the design costs, building costs. Do they also indicate how much profit they will make in the process, and what are they responsible for? Let's say in the building part. There is one price, including their design and building total costs. Of course, they have a very detailed breakdown. We will look at the total amount X, and that will be the construction costs in the contract we sign with them. Well, I think Mr. Eddie Chu wanted to ask, when they submit a tender, do they have to indicate the profit percentage? We have two figures. They have to estimate the costs, and the second is how much money, how much profit they will, what's the profit margin? Let me clarify for you. Will the tender indicate the profit margin? When they submit the tender, it is an estimate of costs to complete design and building, but how much profit they will receive, they do not have to indicate in their tender document. Last supplement question. In the 4 tender submissions, the design and build, if it's higher than the money you're seeking from the FC, or how would you handle that? Well, for typical public works, when we receive the tender, if it's higher than the funding we get in LegCo, we have to look at which areas we can reduce costs, and if we get the approval of the Central Tender Committee, we can enter negotiations with the tenderer. Depending on the outcome, we can follow up. What do they mean by follow up? It means, do they need to come to FC for more money? Well, if our negotiations with the tenderer, if they're willing to reduce the price, and if the price is lower than our funding request, then we don't need to come back. But if it's still higher, then we have different methods. We can consider whether we need more funding application. And second, we can consider the project, whether it needs a new tender. So it depends on the situation. Next, Mr. Leung Go-hong, second round. Chairman, I said that the 50,000, I will object to the 50,000 stadium. They also have a 5,000 public stadium. Now, I think those who agree are ridiculous. We have sports associations running these facilities.
Barcelona Stadium doesn't need any subsidy. Just the revenue from football games. They have 90,000 people, spectators attending their games, and in the least, they have 70,000 spectators. It's difficult whether we can have 10 football matches that can be played in that stadium. As for the performance venue, 50,000 seating capacity, you claim that Macau take away our business. Where is the 50,000 seating capacity arena in Macau. Macau is entertainment business. It is a casino business. They have casinos. They have something like Las Vegas. They don't need you. And everybody knows that international stars go to Japan first. If you are on a world tour, if you are on an Asian tour, you go to Japan first. That they have a big audience. They have many fans. They come to Hong Kong only as a side order. Even if your arena has only 3,000 seats, they still come if you can pay them. So your arguments do not hold any water at all. And then we have to pay a lot of money on that. And then originally it was $8.8 billion, and now it has become $31.8 billion. You don't have any justification for the stadium. The multi-purpose performance venue in West Kowloon has a specific have other objectives. We want it at the waterfront. You've forgotten all this. It's all a mess. As for Wen Chai, you don't know, that was the East Kowloon Sports Park. And now you remove the, you demolish the Wen Chai Park, the Wen Chai Stadium. And then Hong Kong Stadium is also a mess. Your arguments are really not justifiable. You just rely on the pro-establishment to support you. Rubber stamp your proposal. What's the question? Well, I later propose to veto this. Mr. Tommy Chung, your 3 minutes. Now, concerning the dining cove. Now, you put up the hotel and office block in a separate tender, then the dining cove should also be freestanding and separated item. I'm afraid that there will be a big operator who will make use of the approach of managing shopping malls to approve lease contracts. At the end of the day, the catering business is not able to make a living. So I hope this item can be separated from the sports park contract. I also share the view expressed by other members. Since the government foots the bill, is it really necessary to give a term of 25 years in the management contract? You're afraid that nobody will come forward to be the operator. If you look at the tunnels, the investors have to put in all the money to build the tunnel, and therefore with them several decades so that they can recover their costs and make a profit. But now you pay everything and say depreciation will not be counted, you only consider cash. Well, in doing business, you have to take into account depreciation and also interest, and also capital. If you are not, if you really don't have any profit, then the operator should not. The operator will not invest. Now, also for hotels, they have earmarked some money for refurbishment after several years, maybe 5 years. Say for repair and maintenance, and everything is paid by the government, and the operators does not need to foot the bill. Then I'm really concerned about it. Maybe I've misheard you. Now, if you have anything in the paper which I have missed, I hope you'll explain this. Well, if we just pay everything, then I don't think we can. We should allow a term of 25 years for the operator. I think there's a need for us to conduct an interim review so that we can negotiate the term of the contract. Now, concerning repair and maintenance, asked by Mr. Chung, the daily maintenance is by the operator. The government is responsible for large-scale lifetime maintenance, for example, the roof and other major facilities. And those maintenance or updating, upgrading will have to be done just once every 15 or 20 years. For the daily maintenance of the turf or the buildings, the responsibility of the operators. As for the dining cove, that is in response to the recommendation of the Harbourfront Commission. And there will be a link between the park and the dining cove. Therefore, we propose to allow continuity. The operator will manage the dining cove, and there will be catering facilities near the dining cove as well. Our plan is that it will be tied up with the land sale of the hotel and office contract. Dr. Lau Xiaolai, 3 minutes. She's not in the venue. Mr. Junius Ho. Let me speak on design and then on money. Now this is a main. We're going to build a big arena. We have the size, and we can control the size of that. I don't understand the point. Now, those who have the rugby matches, football matches, don't like to have tracks near the surrounding the field. But other big stadiums do have such tracks around the field. Now, we don't have tracks for this big arena. And then in Wan Chai, and also in Hong Kong Stadium, there will be some sort of tinkering, and you're going to provide the tracks. It's really costly, and it costs a lot of efforts. Now, 20 years ago, you removed the tracks to make the pitch better. I understand the point. But now we have this main arena, and we can make adjustments because of the size. Can we maintain the two pitches for football and rugby, and they can accommodate 40,000 seats and 50,000 seats? You know that you have to consider the feasibility. But I can expect that you will provide the tracks for the Hong Kong Stadium. And Rugby 7 will not be played there. And that's a waste of resources. That's the first point. Just now, you put tens of billions of dollars just to ensure that people can make money. What have we earned, or what will we earn? We put in the money, and without any ceiling, you put in about $30 billion. You have about $8 billion for contingency. I can assure you that they will make full use. They will expend all the money and then ask for more. And they have no commitment at all. They have the contract of more than 20 years. You say they will put money in, but the money they put in is very small in comparison with our $30-odd billion. How much is their proportion? The DBO, is it the best out of the 10? I don't know, but I will consider the information you provide us. You have 7 seconds, the Permanent Secretary. The Commissioner will answer the question. Commissioner. Chairman. Please continue. Please be quick. Concerning the $8 billion, they are for price adjustment. They are not contingencies. And that adjustment is according to inflation. I think Mr. Ho referred to the pitch together with the tracks, the Hong Kong Stadium. 140-odd meters in length, and for tracks usually the the straight stretch is more about 100 meters. So it's impossible to put the big pitch of the Hong Kong Stadium into a track. Now, if we have a 50,000 seating stadium for soccer pitches, so soccer matches, and rugby, I think there are still the same constraints. Dr. Fernando Chung. I'm concerned about the point raised by Dr. Yiu, Professor Yiu, in respect of the DBO arrangement. Now, the successful bidder can make big profits from design and build, and then they will just sit on their hands in respect of the operation. And you also provide incentive to invite bidders. According to the administration, those who are capable and those who have experience to participate in this DBO project are not too many. Since there aren't too many such consortia, I'm concerned about the situation of oligopoly. And we also bear the risk for them. We even pay them the cost of putting in the bid. I find it strange. Since the introduction of bidding in the social welfare sector, the NGOs are complaining. They are suffering. They bear the cost for bidding, and the government doesn't give them any reward or compensation. We provide welfare service and we bear the cost, and the government doesn't finance us, doesn't compensate us. Yet this money-making business is compensated by the government, and I find it strange and unreasonable. The administration should provide a detailed explanation on the need for providing such compensations to the bidders. This is a kind of oligopoly, and we will suffer at the end. And will be. I also want to ask about KPI. Now, the welfare sector is asked to provide the performance indicators. They also need to provide evidence and numbers. Well, I think, are there any KPIs for the sports park? Well, in fact, we've given it to the Home Affairs panel. In Annex 2 or Enclosure 2, we have provided the requirements on the management of the facilities. There are 10 areas. I asked the popularization and also raising of the elite sports, and also the organizing of mega events. In fact, in paragraphs 4 to 10, we've adopted the 3 approaches: supporting, popularizing sports, promoting elite sports, and then developing major sports events. And they are in line with the principles of the policy of promoting sports in Hong Kong. Are there KPIs? As for KPIs, they are in Annex 2, which I mentioned earlier. As for the 3 objectives, whether they have KPIs, we don't have this. Those policy objectives are guiding principles for the Home Affairs Bureau and their branches. Now, the Sports Institute has its KPIs. LCSD also has KPIs for the controllers. As for the sports park, the operator will have to comply with the KPIs, and they are responding to our 3 major policy objectives. Ms. Alina Wong, first round, 3 minutes. We support having a stadium. The sport there's about nearly $31.9 billion of public money, and we are deeply concerned because of the Disney project, and we are scared by it. We are concerned about whether it's an unfair treaty. The government provides the land and provides, so to speak, the chicken and the stadium and also the soy sauce, and also invites people to a meal, treat people to a meal, free of charge. You've asked many questions. DBO, according to the administration, there are different types of DBO or different DBO models, and many countries and many DBO models. But we have not heard what model the model you have adopted has been adopted by another country, and why this model is suitable for Hong Kong. The Commissioner, we have looked into many models. We've got consultants to conduct market researches. In overseas countries, some use DBFO. The consortium, Chairman, I'm talking about DBO. My question is in response to a question asked Professor Yu. DBFO is one of the DBO models. As for DBO, there are 2 different models. One, the old part is that the government pays a management fee. Say, within the contract, the government pays the operator to operate the facility. In our model, the operator operates on a self-financing basis in respect of the venue. The better the management, the higher the profit for the operator. It is self-financing, and therefore there is incentive for the operator to make good use of the venue, and we believe that is the appropriate approach. Why don't you require the successful bidder to share part of the construction costs? Just said by the Permanent Secretary, if there is sharing of capital costs, then in the future, during the operational periods, the government has to pay the operator. It's just like financing. The government in fact borrows money because the one pays in, the operator pays that, and then therefore in the future the government has to pay the interest or the loan. Singapore is operating under this model, but we think our proposal is more suitable for Hong Kong. Well, concerning the paper to be submitted, they will show us the various models they have considered. Concerning a PFI proposed by Ms. Wong, the private sector provides the funding. We've considered that. But in a very early stage, but if the company is required to pay part of the capital cost, is not viable for the whole project, and therefore the government decided to build the project. Why? You have to explain that we have to pay, the government has to pay the chicken, pay the soy sauce, and also give free lunch to somebody. Now for the CEC, they organize business activities, but in the sports park, 2 out of 3 are community facilities.
And then for the 8-hectare public open space, it is open to the public round the clock. And then the fee charging policy of the LCSD also apply here, with the exception of the main stadium. Therefore, the income cannot support the construction cost of the sports park. Next, Dr. Edward Yu. 3 minutes, second round. Thank you, Chair. Perhaps I need to clarify a point. Just now, the Permanent Secretary talked about the Hong Kong CEC being purely commercial. You may want to imply that it is not it was not built on the basis of PPP, but in fact for phase 1 of CC, it was indeed a PPP. Now my question is, when you screen the bids, I think you will try to make reference to the lowest bid. I think this is a very important point. For all design and build contracts, a different design will mean that you can't simply dismiss a bid on the basis that it is more costly. The designs are different, the bids will be different, and usually if you award the contract to the lowest bid, you will usually give the contract to the poorest design. So usually we won't adopt the lowest bid as the criterion for screening the bids when it comes to DBO. So please clarify about the yardstick that you're going to adopt. Chair, I never said that the contract will be awarded to the lowest bid. I simply said that price would account for 40%, others would account for 60%. So if the cost is lower, then the score for that part will be higher. There is also a technical score, 60%, and then we have to look at the suggested share of income with the government, as well as the basic amount to be payable to the government. So there are 3 elements. For the technical envelope, it will be dependent on the quality. So it isn't a matter of the contract going to the lowest bidder. But what about the design? Will it be scored? Yes, part of the technical scoring. The technical score will cover the design, the operational plan, the business plan, and the proposals in relation to IT arrangements and security arrangements. All of them will be assessed. Now, if the design itself is very expensive, though it is a good design, it means that you will dismiss it simply because it is too costly, as this will be reflected in the cost envelope. I think he has explained that 60% will go to the technical envelope, including design. Another 40% will go to the price envelope. So a lower bid will score higher in terms of the cost. But then if the design score is higher, it means that it can still win the contract. Time is up for me, but I have to say that this is not the practice in the sector. Well, the Central Tendering Board does require us to do so. We have to open the envelope for the price, and then we open the envelope for the technical scores. Indeed, it is the practice. Claudia Mo, I don't think it's right for you to say that you agree with the administration. Of course, I'm a layperson. In the case of the Sydney Opera, when I was young, I knew that for the Sydney Opera, the initial design was dismissed by engineers and architects, saying that it was an engineering-wise impossibility, saying that it goes against gravity, and of course the cost is huge. But after it has completed, it has become the national icon of Australia. So when you talk about the design, this is like what Edward Yu is saying. A design may be very expensive. You may sort of screen it out, and at the end of the day, the contract will go to the lowest bidder. So please clarify What about the design and its relationship with the technical score? Let me give a simple reply. We have to strike a balance between a good design and the cost. As Ms. Mo has said, Sydney Opera is very good in terms of its design, but has suffered from serious cost overrun. So the bidders would know about the marking scheme, and then the bidders have to make accommodations. We will choose the most balanced bid. If the design is good, of course, we'll choose it. But then if it is a very costly one with exorbitant cost, then we have to study the matter. I thought we were talking about a major sports venue, but after all, it all boils down to the dollar sign. Now, earlier on, you talked about the carrot and stick approach, but you have made it very clear that in future, the repair and maintenance will be such that the minor ones will be picked up by the operator. Now, for the major ones, the life cycle repairs like those emerging ones in 15-10 years, then it will be picked up by the government. Now, you are talking about huge sum of money. You are giving the capital to the tenderer to make a profit. How come that you are still giving such incentives to the tenderer? I don't need you to impose a penalty on the tenderer, but then for the roof, I think it could be very expensive. It could cost us hundreds of millions of dollars for the maintenance. You are now awarding a 25-year contract. Now, for 10 to 15 years, it means that they would only have to carry out the major repair maintenance once in the contract period. Yes, let me give a simple reply. Upon completion of construction, Kai Sports Park will be owned by the government. It is a government asset. So for major sports facilities and major community facilities, for the government to pick up the repair and maintenance bill, we believe that it is reasonable. Next, Holden Chow, 3 minutes, second round. Thank you, Chair. I've been following the proceeding. It appears to me that many members are concerned about the excessively favorable terms to be given to the successful bidder. The Bureau has been giving replies to us, telling us that the sports park will be a venue providing public service. To me, I think either the government do it on its own, and of course this isn't the case, so the controversy is if you allow the private sector to play a role, then you need to give some incentives, like providing the income from the main stadium to the operator. Let me talk about this. For the input from the private sector, I think it is arguable, and I think there is a case for it to be raised. A few years ago in the UK, I think they were building an Olympian venue. I think West Ham was entrusted with the job. I think at the time the soccer club had certain arguments with the government. When I look at the breakdown, I think at the time the government put up with £16 million, while the soccer club put up £5 million. That's the initial arrangement. After certain sort of negotiation rounds and with public consultation, there was a desire for the club to put in more commitment. At the end of the day, it was £15 million, so 3 times the original amount. I cite this example so as to facilitate our debate, because for a private tenderer, private sector tenderer that's interested in the project, I think we all have the view that more commitment should be expected, instead of allowing the tenderer to make a huge profit out of it. So perhaps the administration should reconsider this and try to increase the input from the successful bidder, because as of now it seems that we are offering something very lucrative to the successful bidder, and the bidder can make a profit. Well, we did visit the venue that you referred to. It wasn't built by the soccer club, it was built by the government, and then a lot of problems emerged when the venue was handed over to the soccer club. The operator only came in at a late stage, and so there were many problems. Maybe the commissioner can comment on it. Well, it isn't a DBO approach. It is a very different case from that in Hong Kong. For the soccer club to take over the venue, its original venue was worn and torn. It needed a new venue. It got it from the government. Currently, it is said that a lot of alterations will be required. Say, for example, the track has to be removed because it doesn't fit in with the soccer matches. Now the club has to commit more, and in fact in future the use of the stadium is entirely in the hands of the soccer club. As to whether it is going to work in their favor, there are different views. They put up with £15 million, but it has sole use of the stadium. I think it was after a long stretch of negotiation, and at the end of the day they reach a balance. But the case is very different from that in Hong Kong. Wu Chi-wai, third round. I have some questions. Now, as far as the construction cost is concerned, I think we still want to know about this element. That is, what is the estimated land premium? So, what is the land premium that we are sort of foregoing? And then I want to know if the administration has estimated for the purpose of benchmarking, that is, had the three of them been operated by the government, we would like to know about the financial implications. And then we've been told that the design is quite detailed. So for the DBO, for the so-called design element, I want to know about the leeway offered to the successful tenderer so as to increase the operational efficiency, so that we can be convinced that the design part will help with the entire operation. Commissioner. Well, for the land price, well, the Tai Tak Sports Park is a government asset. In future, there will be lots of public facilities. Like other public works projects, we don't estimate the land premium. As far as the design is concerned, the consultants have expertise to come up with the design. Different designers working on the same venue would come up with a lot of different variations. For the design that we have here for reference, I think functionally it can meet our requirements, but surely we welcome the potential bidders to suggest new elements so as to improve upon our proposal. Well, of course, we can give the figures, Mr. Chairman. I have to emphasize that for the LCSD venues, we focus on management. We don't organize activities. But in future, the successful tenderer will have to organize activities, and for that part, we cannot provide any benchmarking. Yes, we can only sort of give you an idea about the money required for managing the venues. 3 minutes, second round, Dr. Helena Wong. Just now, we're wondering why we should provide the capital to the successful bidder to make money. Now, officials have told us that some of the facilities are public facilities, and you may not be able to generate a lot of income or profits For the commercial floor area, we have 57,000 meters square floor space for retail and dining, a bowling center, and then also the dining cove measuring 1,000 meters square. So such facilities will be available to the operator to operate and to make a profit. So what is the estimated profits? PS. For our paper given to the Home Affairs panel, there is an enclosure to that paper, and that simulation to the financial projection for the first 5 years. But then that's the gross income, and we haven't incorporated the income to be shared with the government. We have got figures like $340 million and $970 million, but then that's just the gross income. We haven't deducted the cost. Well, why can't you give us an idea as to the income to be shared with the operator? Does it mean that you think that there is no income to be shared with us? PS. Well, there will be a tendering process. We hope that it will be very competitive. Bidders will look at their own circumstances, and then they will suggest a figure to be shared with the government. And there's also a fixed sum that has to be given to the government. And then anything on top of that has to be shared with the government. If we are being rigid in writing down specific figures, indeed we have considered this. The higher the figure, the less attractive the bid or the tender. Having listened to members, we'll go back to see whether we should provide for more requirements in the tendering document. The overriding principle is that we don't want to weaken the attractiveness of the tender. If it fails to attract interest, we have to do it afresh. And at the same time, we don't want to allow the bidders to have a lot of room to make huge profits. So we have to strike a balance between the two. Next, Mr. Marvin Kwok, 2 minutes, third round. Thank you, Chair. As I have said earlier on, the successful bidder will only have to bear the risk at the later stage, and nobody can tell about the size of the risk. In the course of it, after the tenderer has submitted a bid, does it mean that it is to the tune of $23.8 billion? What if the tenderer would like to refine the design? What is the sort of leeway available? And what about adjustments to the cost? What about adjustments to the fees? So how are you going to make sure that the contract will be executed properly? Commissioner, if X dollars have been suggested by the successful bidder, then the successful tenderer has to make sure that it will deliver all those things promised in the document. If it would like to seek improvements, if the improvements can enhance the effectiveness of its future operation, first of all, it has to bear the responsibility.
I'd like to ask about the tender design. It's cost plus fee, or is it just cost? Is there a management fee component? There's no management fee. It's a lump sum basis. For example, they have the amount X, and they have to build all our requested facilities, the design and construction. That's the lump sum. So there's a ceiling but no floor. There were questions asked about risk. If you ask the construction industry when they submit a tender, they will estimate construction, the worker salary costs and the material costs, there is some risk. Mr. Leung, go home. So this is the most common government arrangement. It's not commercially feasible. If you ask a banker for funding, the bank won't lend. It's the same with Disney, same with XLR, same with the airport. So you have to beg people, and you have to give incentives. So that is the whole secret. So when West Kowloon, they had a retractable roof. There was a single bid. That became a joke. And the retractable roof, it was billed as something spectacular, and ultimately it was not feasible because cleaning costs were exorbitant, and you could make obscene profits from just cleaning the roof. So the government is just extravagant, and they want to create a commercial interest. I understand that, but I'm not going to fund that, especially for the 50,000 seat stadium. And there's no response from the government. The only thing I can do is to call for adjournment of meeting, and I'll give you an opportunity, and I now formally request adjournment of a meeting. We'd like to use the time to ask more questions. You need to do your research, and I can tell you I now formally give my colleagues time to raise their questions and requests. You can call it filibustering or whatever. Mr. Leung Go-hong, according to PWSC Rules of Procedure, Rule 33, he has put forward a motion calling for an adjournment. So members can speak once, and we'll now have Mr. Leung Go-hong. It's actually very simple. All sports mega events are subsidized by the government, from Los Angeles games. So it's not a sports mega event, it's a sports zone. You want to prove that you can do that. There's no, I haven't researched the incentives, but whatever you do creates commercial opportunities. So people who do not pay for this will not enjoy the benefits. So the question is it worth doing this project? If you don't build the 50,000 seating stadium, how many events will have 50,000 spectators? You don't allow people to smoke and drink. If you ask the music fans, a 50,000 stadium that doesn't allow smoking and drinking, people won't. They won't go to those venues. It will be a white elephant. I don't know when I'll decease. I would like to have on my gravestone that this person had obstructed a white elephant project. So that's all I want on my gravestone. The whole issue is you're building something. You have not consulted the people, not even the stakeholders. I remember the pledge that we would build the sports park, and C.Y. Leung had said he would like to build public housing, and he was criticized. So we have to waste money to subsidize the operations, and according to LCSD fee arrangement, I have no objection to that. But the 50,000 seat stadium, it's a waste of money. Could you withdraw that? We have a 40,000 seat stadium. Nobody plays football. We have the Hong Kong Premier League. The average attendance, how much? It's less than 1,000 per match, and now you're wasting our money. I'm not referring to the people sitting opposite me. I'm not going to fund that. Unless you withdraw the 50,000 seat stadium, you can do something else. Leeds has a cricket stadium. It's there. People have a lot of land. It's a mecca. But can you build a mecca all of a sudden? Can you build a soccer stadium and make money out of it? Ms. Claudia Mo, 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. We are PWSC, and it's regrettable. We should be focusing on public works. But now everybody is focused on money. The government has made it clear that public works has a lot of commercial opportunities, but you're only benefiting the large consortiums. The whole package, it's a monopoly. Now, even Mr. Tommy Chung asked, can you divide up the projects? Can you divide up the hotels and F&B? If it's monopolized by one contractor, that is terrifying. And I'm thinking about small things like parking. It's a monopoly business. They can charge $100 an hour. Do you know that hotels charge up to $400 an hour? You're not any VIP. You're just a walk-in customer. And that is worrisome. The design, I'm worried that if a beautiful design such as the Sydney Opera House is proposed, it will not be accepted because of the exorbitant cost. But these are landmarks of Sydney. No matter what it costs, Australians are very proud of it. But in Hong Kong, could you do something similar? Of course not. We have so many white elephant projects, and to the tune of billions. This is a $32 billion project. You're saying it's not the lowest tender win, but I'm sure it's not going to be something beautiful. I support sports projects, but the more we talk about it, the more worried I am. We're talking about budget overrun and whether there would be more funding, and you said that it would depend on circumstances. It means that you cannot guarantee that you won't come back for more funding. We don't know in 10 years' time what will happen, and but given so many uncertainties, could you withdraw the paper? Will you consider diversifying the project? Ms. Helena Wong, Chairman. I support adjournment because there are too many problems. There are too many uncertainties. We have gone through the Disney unequal treaty, so we need to be very careful. Otherwise, we'll get mired in another sinkhole. If they don't do well, we have to inject more money, and it's a bottomless pit. So, this Kai Tak Sports Park, is it tourism infrastructure? Is this going to be a sports infrastructure? We won't know if there's going to be any return on investment, and the lease income is unknown, even though you say they are estimates. So we don't know whether it should be considered as a business venture or infrastructure. So you're putting it that we should go ahead regardless of whether money can be made. But LegCo should monitor public finances. You need to tell us, is this a sports infrastructure? Regardless of whether we make money or not. So, the Democratic Party, regarding government business collusion being packaged as infrastructure, we don't want to see a repeat of the Disney fiasco. So what is the government's role in the future? Legislators are unsure. So if you say that in the F&B and car park they will charge exorbitant fees, does that mean the government has no say and legislators have no oversight over the arrangements? And if we give them 20 years for the DBO, can they run the show as they please? And are we locked into 25 years and there's no exit clause? Do we have to endure it for 25 years? There are a lot of questions. So I feel we need to adjourn. You also have contingency fees, and that includes 180 million for bid incentive for unsuccessful tenders. We've never heard of that before. The government public works tenders, they never say that the government has to subsidize 50% of the bid. Never in the public works. Chairman, I think you should know. The government has never subsidized or refunded the bid costs. So is this a competition or is it a tender? It's not made clear, Mr. Holden Chow. Well, first of all, I object to Mr. Leung Kok-hong's adjournment motion. Well, Mr. Leung Kok-hong does not wish to build the Kai Tak Sports Park, but I think the sports park is important in our sports development. We now have a controversy over financing. I also have to thank the officials for telling us, and I need to point out I pointed out the West Ham example, and they had visited that. I understand there are differences, but I need to say there might be similarities, and the reason I quoted this example is, according to this tender arrangement, the operator, they have a 25-year operation arrangement. West Ham, they have the Olympic Stadium, the right to use the stadium, and I just want to point out, after negotiations, the West Ham investment they had increased their investment to £15 million. So we need to take a look at whether we can negotiate better terms. Second, I want to point out that the future operator, if a company receives the operation rights, how will they assist other sports industries' development? For example, if the Hong Kong government, let's say, aside from promoting rugby, let's say they want to promote cricket as an example. If we want to promote cricket, I might want to introduce sports events, cricket events to Hong Kong. But the operator, they will have their own view whether they want to introduce cricket to Hong Kong, and whether the revenue is sufficient. The company might have its own view, and if it leads to some conflict, I'd like the government to think about that. If in the future operations, if we want to select some events, if we shortlisted some events, okay, Mr. Fernando Chung, I support Mr. Leung Kok-hong's adjournment motion because we do need to analyze it a bit more. The Labour Party had we feel that it's not necessary to build a 50,000 seat stadium. We see that the Hong Kong Stadium, a 40,000 seat facility, its usage is very low. Statistics indicate that in September 2012 to August 2016, during the 4 years, on average each year, the football matches, there were 14.25 days. There are 365 days in a year, and we only use 14.25 days. And local matches, the average attendance was 2,300 people. That is a 5.78% attendance, less than 6%. So the government is familiar with these figures. So even if you look at performance matches, the average attendance is 14,000 people. The attendance is roughly 30%, not even 40%. So even with the latest figures in 2013, we're talking international matches, the attendance was only 40%. So that is our low usage rate. And you want to build a 50,000 seat stadium. We need to demolish the Wan Chai Stadium. We feel that is not efficient, it's not responsible use of our public resources. So even if you don't look at that, if you look at the design, build, operate model, there are a lot of questions Dr. Chung Yi raised. The self-sufficient operations, first of all, they will rely on commercial operation. So for the disadvantaged, for the physically handicapped or low-income groups, if you operate on a self-sufficient model, we are worried that these groups won't have access. I don't want to see the central promenade where they have wine and dine, large concerts. We're talking about tickets that cost hundreds of dollars, events that are not accessible. I don't want to see tens of billions spent for the rich, Miss Lau Siu Lai. The Home Affairs panel, starting from the Home Affairs panel up to now, it's been very confusing. Why do we have construction models and operation models that benefit consortiums? They have 25 years, and it just says that we don't. The government just says that people who know how to organize these things are not interested. We need to provide more incentives, and since so many people don't know, you don't know, then why do you have to do it? And they say that we need the sports industry to be to develop. We need to have elite events. We need mega events. So I don't understand, why do we need mega events? You are using 20 plus hectares, $30+ billion to host 10 soccer matches, and you have to pay people to come to play. And does that support the sports industry? No. You use land to run mega international events, and what about local events? The Sports Institute is not training local soccer players. Local sports facilities are being demolished. So Wan Chai Stadium will be suspended, and local events are not supported. When you spend 20 plus hectares and 30 billion on international events.
Just 10 matches for a whole year. So they are just cheating. They are not going to organize international football matches. It's just for pop concerts so that they can have commercial and also to benefit commercial activities. And how much can such activities improve the living of people of Hong Kong and promote tourism is really doubtful. They're just cheating, and whether they can achieve that is unknown. What they put on the table is just having mega events. But if you have mega events in Hong Kong, can they help to promote sports in Hong Kong? In fact, you damage the sports events in Hong Kong. The sports in Hong Kong. You ask commercial business organizations to run our sports arenas, and they have no experience. They don't know. In fact, they don't know what to do. I prefer you build more community sports facilities instead of a big sports park, and then use the rest of the money to build public housing. Next, Mr. Wu Chi-wai, 3 minutes. The capital injection is $31.9 billion, 28 hectares of land. If you use the the current cost, it will be another tens of billions of dollars. Now you say that for sports, therefore land premium is not included. But even the Disneyland has to provide the funds. What is the ERR? Let's don't talk about IRR, just ERR. The overall economic return. Shouldn't we have the numbers for that? Well, that's the first point. Many members have asked for further information, and they will only be available later. And such information includes benchmarking of the operating cost, the various models, and why you prefer this model. And the operation of the sports park, what is its role? Promoting mega sports versus entertainment events. How would it affect the operation of the sports park? Such information is necessary. Now, our meeting will soon end in 15 minutes. But the adjournment itself is just to enable us to ask the administration to prepare for more information, so that we can have a more detailed discussion of the sports park. And we are concerned about the operation and also the consequences. The government is put in land about $50 billion, and then capital investment more than $30 billion. So we are going to inject about $80 billion in supporting this project. The administration is duty-bound to explain. This is a big project. Are there any objective performance indicators to show that the investment resources is worth doing? They should not just vaguely say that the sports sector wants this, Hong Kong as a big metropolis needs this. This is too vague. What are the specific indicators? What are the key performance indicators that can be achieved through this sports park? If you don't have, then the operator will not have any objective indicator to measure their performance. Mr. Nathan Law. I support sports facilities in principle, but the question is whether there will be reduction in other sports facilities. Now you have this facility. Is it public money worth spending? And that's my concern. I've asked experienced people on the design of the sports park, and I've asked whether the turf is suitable, and also the turf and also the roof are favorable to sports development. The answer is negative. Probably other senior government officials or the CE have some dubious thoughts, and they therefore want to remove, they demolish the Wan Chai sports ground, and they use this sports park as a replacement. The Wan Chai sports park is indispensable. And if there is a new stadium, then it should have been used for several years and put to test before Wan Chai is to be demolished. That's the demand of the community. I hope the departments concerned should speak up. This sports park will not determine the fate of Wan Chai sports ground. As for the distribution of major sports facilities in Hong Kong, you should not assume that the Hong Kong Stadium will not compete with the Hong Kong sports. The Hong Kong Stadium will not compete with sports park. They assume the government just let people have the feeling that with the redevelopment of Hong Kong Stadium, they can demolish Wan Chai sports ground. And there is another issue, which is DBO, and Professor Yiu has stated it very clearly. The government wants to prepare a soy sauce chicken. It provides the chicken and soy sauce. Therefore, the authorities should make sure that it's a treat for their citizens. But the operator can take a fat cut from that chicken. There is no adequate supervision. DBO is a major concern, and the worries have not been addressed, and more time should be given for the administration to prepare for the explanation. Mr. Chen Chi-chun, 3 minutes. I think the soy sauce chicken is not a good analogy, because if you have the chicken, just one, if you've eaten the chicken, that's the end of the story. But you have to bear with this sports park for your whole life if it is a bad one. I thank Mr. Leung for the motion. This is just to give 3 minutes to each member to express their concerns. I hope the Commissioner and the Permanent Secretary will jot down our concerns, and you have to deal with it in this committee and also the FC. Even those who support the general direction of the sports park, many members are still concerned about the DBO approach. This DBO model has a lot of questions. The administration is just weak. Is afraid that there will be no one bidding for the project. The administration has not heard suggestions that are favorable to the business and also to the administration. Mr. Michael Tien has proposed a proposal of 15 plus 10 years. Now, if the first 15 years, in the first 15 years, the cooperation is good, then the renewal of the contract in the next 10 years is very high. A high possibility. No, because changing the contractor will be costly. Now the second half is really unclear. You don't know what the work will be, and therefore they try to make a huge profit in the first part of the contract. That's concern of Professor Yiu. If you make sure that they will make a huge profit at first, and then in the second half they'll make a loss, then they just walk out in the second half. Our concern is about the second half of the operation. Now for Coliseum, for Hong Kong Stadium, you manage them directly. I have difficulties in holding you responsible. In the future, when they are there is one more layer above them, then I really don't know how to hold the operator responsible. Say, for example, if the operator has adopted political censorship, then I really cannot hold the operator responsible. I cannot go after the operator, nor can I go after you. And what about the breakup cost? Yeah, and you have not provide us the details. Say they committed, say a 10 football match per year, and they do not, they cannot do that, then you still cannot hold them responsible. Next, Mr. Jeremy Tam, 3 minutes. Most of the members have spoken against the 25-year model and also the DBO approach. And that is the $60 million reward or compensation for the failed bidders. These are major issues. Your explanation is that you have considered everything and DBO is the best. The doubt is, what sort of comparison have you had? You should have expected these questions. You should have done your homework. And there were 2 small DBO projects, and they were about public services such as sewage treatment or refuse transfer stations, and they were very different from the present proposal. And we have asked about major events in Hong Kong, or how other cities deal with major events, and you quoted Singapore, and you should compare the pros and cons. You should show us the pros and cons. You just said, keep saying that you've compared, you have looked through them, but this is the best. But you have not given us the details. The 25 years plus 10 years add up to 35 years. It can also be 20 plus 15. Now, if in the first 20 years they have done well, then it's reasonable to extend the contract by another 15 years. Our concern is whether it is, in fact, a very commercialized project rather than a sports project. And you will be more inclined towards commercial activities rather than sports events. Now you say there is a management committee which will prevent that. But we have the West Kowloon experience. We're concerned that this sports park will become an independent domain. It has happened before, and it is something we don't want to see have already occurred in other projects. The worry of an independent domain is not unjustified, and there should be further discussion on this. As for docks, whether they are admissible. All right, time is up. Next, Mr. Chu Hoi-dik. You have 3 minutes. And after Mr. Chu Hoi-dik, then there is no need to vote on this adjournment motion because the time left over is not too much. Mr. Chu Hoi-dik, you have 3 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. The adjournment motion is moved to enable members to express their views by a different means. Now, if you just limit us, then we can only have 1 minute after 1 minute. On the project, I want to make 2 points. The sports park model is something that is being used by the administration after 1907. They have big projects. They plan with big projects. That is the WKCD, the Disneyland, the Kai Tak Cruise Terminal, and then the sports park. Is the same kind. They have big plans and big projects. They say we have to build something big in order to be attractive. But when it is big, it also brings a lot of problems. A big project will generate a monster, whether you call it a monster, the WKCD authority, or whether it's a company, the Disney company. And now there is another company which is to be brought in. It's another monster. And in facing up to a monster, you need to build a relationship. There is the contract. And when it comes to a contract, the Legislative Council, which has legislative authority, can do nothing about these big projects. If a contract is signed by the government with the operator, with the contractor, then usually the repeated pattern is that the government is disadvantaged. Those who can take up such a big contract are few and far between. So the government has to be lenient in respect of the contract terms. Even those who are from the business of community sector oppose such projects. Say if a big consortium, only a big consortium can take up the F&B contract, then those that the gentleman representing the F&B sector is against it. Now people don't want to go to these big projects, they want to go to small-scale projects. Not much time left. Many venues, including the Wenchai Sports Ground, the stadium, have many good uses. We don't need the sports park. Thank you. The time is up. Now we have endorsed one item, and that is the Sandy Ridge project. It's expected that it will be submitted to the FC in June. Does any member ask for separate vote for this? Mr. Chu Hai-dik asked for the project to be separately voted. Our next meeting is the 10th of May, 8:30 a.m. The meeting is now adjourned. There is no need to vote on adjournment motion because there are less than 3 minutes left. Thank you, members, for coming. We have had a 4-hour meeting.